Hey, finished up chapter 7 where it's set in the present, and Lafayette has this dream about fishing and knew Charlie interrupting the fish in chapter 7. Um, Lafayette and Tyree keep talking about things and how La is not responsible. But it's still something he struggles with. They also talked about the time that Charlie tried to save the dog that got hit by the car. And how it lived for several days, but still died. Alright, have you ever watched a movie produced in a language that you didn't speak? Yes. My only issue with movies with subtitles is I can't do other things while I watch them. And normally when I watch TV, I work too. But I love other movies from other cultures. Chapter 8, me and Tyree walked the 4 blocks to the train station without saying anything. He bought me 2 tokens using a bunch of change in his pocket. He had a Metro card for himself since he went to work every day. The Metro card let him ride the train as much as he liked for just a one-time charge. As he stood there counting out the change, I remembered him and Mama at the dining room table adding and re-adding and trying to make money go further than it was likely to go. I stood at the token booth with my hands in my pockets, trying not to notice the people standing in line behind Tyree getting impatient. When the train finally came, I took a seat by the window and stared out at the rainy darkness until the train went back into the tunnel and took us downtown. I tried not to think about how poor we were, but when we got off at 14th Street and walked up the stairs, all the lights from the stores hit me. There were toys and clothes in the windows and people dressed in nice warm coats and hats or getting out of fancy cars. As we walked along 14th Street, I remember the first time I realized we were poor. I was in 3rd grade and my teacher gave everyone in the class a letter to take home. When Mama got home from work that night, I gave her the letter and sat beside her on the couch while she read it. I tried to read over her shoulder, but there were a lot of words typed real small. After Mama finished reading the letter, she folded it up again and again until it was real tiny. If your teacher asks about it, she said, taking the letter into the kitchen and putting it in the trash, you tell her we don't need anybody's fresh air fund. You tell her we appreciate her thoughts, though. You hear me, Lafayette? I'd followed her as far as the kitchen doorway and stood there leaning against it nodding, not sure what she was talking about. What's fresh air fund? I asked. Mama sighed and started washing the dishes left over from breakfast. She ran some hot water over them, then rubbed ivory-free soap on a washcloth before answering. It's a camp, she said. I want to go to camp. It's a camp for kids whose parents can't afford to send them somewhere else. For poor kids. I watched Mama wash dishes and let the words sink in. Are we poor? I asked. Poor enough, Mama said. She scratched her forehead with her soapy hand, then wiped the soap away with her arm. But not that poor, and we won't always be this way either. When I was a baby, we all went to Beaumont, Puerto Rico for my grandmother's funeral. Tyree said Puerto Rico was like what pictures of paradise look like, all green and warm and pure. Mama always promised we'd go back again one summer when we had enough money. We ain't ever going to have enough money, Charlie had said. Yes, we will, Charlie, Mama told him. She pressed her hand against his cheek. When? I asked. I was wanting to feel her hand on my cheek, wanting her to look in my eyes, and promised we'd have enough money. Soon, Mama said, still keeping her hand on Charlie's cheek. Soon. But it seemed most days we barely had enough money to pay the rent, let alone fly to paradise. Which best summarizes Mama? Read it. Answer it. Soon ain't coming soon enough, Charlie said. We were poorer now. Sometimes if Tyree didn't figure money out right or something came up, like the time I lost 3 textbooks and had to pay for them before I could get new ones, we'd end up having stuff I didn't much care to eat, like cornbread that Tyree stretched with flour, and powdered vegetable soup with pieces of hot dogs in it. Or sometimes Tyree would send me to the store around the corner for 75 cents worth of spiced ham and 50 cents worth of cheese, enough for 2 sandwiches, 3 if you cut the meat in half and used a lot of mayonnaise. We got food stamps from the city and a little bit of money once a month. But there was always something one of us needed that seemed to cost just a little bit more than we had. You wish we were rich, T? Tyree nodded. Every day. Maybe not every day, but most days. How come? Life would just be easier. I could go to school. So we went to the past and now, excuse me, you're back in the present. Me and Tyree walked past a group of boys passing a bottle around on the corner of 14th Street and 6th Avenue. I eyed them. One of them eyed me back, then said, "What's up?" Me and Tyree said, "What's up?" back. They reminded me of New Charlie and his friends hanging on the corner of my block. I'd seen them in the same position, huddled in a circle, passing a bottle of beer around. I wondered if that's what New Charlie was doing right now. I missed him suddenly. He'd never come with us to see an art flick, though. He said they bored the living mess out of him. "It ain't my fault you're not in college, you know." "Nobody's blaming anybody," laughed Tyree said, sounding tired and old. "You just asked a question, and I answered it. That's all." It had stopped raining and gotten a little bit colder out now. I pulled my coat sleeves down over my hands. A limousine drove past us slowly. I wondered if there was a famous rapper inside. Rappers and basketball players were always talking about buying their mamas houses and cars. If New Charlie became a rapper, I wondered what he'd buy us. I looked down at my boots. They were black and scuffed. Tyree had promised he'd have some money to get me another pair in 2 weeks. The boots felt kind of tight, too. They made me remember that guy David in the shoehorn. After Mama died, we started getting some money from the state. I think we got some when Daddy died, too, but I'm not sure. When the checks came, Tyree usually used them to pay rent and buy food. He used the money he made at work to buy his clothes and school supplies. After the textbook thing, he started trying to put a little in the bank for hard times. Sometimes I sat at the dining room table with him and helped him figure stuff out. By the time we got through figuring, there wasn't much left over. On paydays, if the rent wasn't due, Tyree always made sure there was some left to see a movie or rent a video. And sometimes we'd stop at McDonald's or get a slice of pizza. I looked at Tyree. He was walking with his head down and frowning, like he was thinking serious about things. He needed a haircut, so his hair kind of fell toward his forehead a little bit. I looked down at his sneakers. They were old and dirty looking. He'd bought them before Mama died. They were Adidas, but the kind no one wore anymore. I moved a little bit closer to him, wondering if people could tell we were poor. He couldn't go back to school. Not right now, anyway, because of me. Because of New Charlie. He couldn't quit his job, and he couldn't go at night because the caseworker would be on us talking about how much me and New Charlie were home alone too much. The only way he'd be able to go to college was if me and New Charlie went to live down south. I don't like being poor, T. Tyree looked at me. "We won't always be this way, you know. It's just a temp thing." He put his arm around my shoulder and I nodded, but I didn't see a way out. Just years and years of us this way. Us moving in a circle called time. "Tyree," I said, "that guy David from Huawei, he ever kill anybody with that shoehorn?" I wanted to change the subject, to stop thinking about being poor. Tyree thought for a moment. "That's the story Charlie tells about the guy making a knife out of it." I nodded. "Correction officer found it under his bed. That kid's probably still doing time." Charlie tries to make it seem like he killed someone. "You ever try to just talk to Charlie?" Tyree asked. We turned on 13th Street. I shrugged. "And say what?" "You know, just talk. Say what's up. Ask him how his life is going, what kind of things he likes to do. Stuff like that." "I know where his life is going. Down the toilet." Tyree eyed me. "Maybe. He knows you think that, and that's why he acts the way he does. I feel myself starting to shake. I hated when Tyree did this. It's not my fault, I said. Everything ain't my fault, all right? Some people turned to look at me, but I didn't care. I started walking fast downtown, 13th Street, past the quad. Tyree was somewhere behind me. I didn't care. I hoped he would turn into dust. Hoped he would disappear, forever and ever, amen. I sniffed. I could feel tears running down my nose. Lafayette! Tyree's hand was on my shoulder, yanking me around. It ain't my fault, I said, my voice choking up in the back of my throat. He burned all of Mama's pictures. I felt cold suddenly, cold and sweaty. At the same time I hated New Charlie and I hated Tyree, I wanted to be dead, dead like Mama. Maybe I'd die of hypothermia. Then it'd just be the two of them in that house, every day, thinking about what they could have done to keep me alive. I just sat in the window and lit a match to them and let the little... I gulped. I couldn't catch my breath. He let the little fires float down. A man with a little girl looked at us, then grabbed the little girl's hand and crossed the street. He didn't mean it, Lafayette. Tyree kept his hand on my shoulder. When I tried to jerk away, he held on tighter. It was just his way. Those two pictures I got are the only ones left. I hated New Charlie, hated him. Wish he'd never come home. At least then we'd have some other pictures. I know, he said, I know. I felt myself sagging into Tyree like he was a wall. Felt him put his arms around me. Then he got the nerve to pull plants in all the windows, Tyree, like plants was going to change something. I know, Laf, Tyree kept saying. I know. He's all bad, T, I cried, and you're all good, and I ain't nothing. Tyree let out a little laugh. Nah, Lafayette, Charlie ain't no bad. And you know you got it going on. He was quiet for a moment. And I definitely am not all good. I was getting colder and colder. Tyree kept his arms around me to keep me from shivering. Brother to brother, Lafayette? I nodded. B to B, I whispered. It was something Tyree had started saying right after Mama died. It meant love you, but we never really said that to each other. He'd said brother to brother meant that and then some. It meant we'd be there for each other no matter what. Hey, let's bag the movie and go get something hot to drink, okay? Tyree said. Yeah, let's. Tyree kept his arm around my shoulders as we walked back towards 5th Avenue. We went into a coffee shop on the corner of 6th and 10th. There weren't that many people in it, and me and Tyree took seats in the back. There was soft music playing and a couple of people sitting at tables and writing in notebooks and on laptop computers. I ordered a hot chocolate and an apple Danish, and Tyree ordered coffee. He handed me his napkin and I wiped my eyes and blew my nose. I felt tired and empty, and even with Tyree's right across the table from me, I felt a little bit alone. Our stuff came and Tyree started talking. I picked at my Danish, hoping he'd tell me about Mama, about the day she died. I hoped he'd change the story around to make me the hero, the one who saved her. But he didn't. He started talking about our daddy, and when he started talking, we weren't in that coffee shop anymore. We were in Central Park. And I stopped picking up my Danish and leaned in close, not wanting to miss any of it. They're not literally in Central Park, but that's where their heads are at. Okay, the best words. Here the question is, what is the best word to describe Tyree? Use evidence from the text to support your answer. So start with the best word to describe Tyree is. And then you tell me why and give me a quote. All right. I have no idea where that came from, but that's pretty cool.